Hello, this is Coach Tim Campbell, and I'm your host for the Self-Made is a Myth, Make a Difference Together show, where we're talking with successful business owners to hear their stories of the journey to building their business. And because we know that success in business doesn't come on our own, we recognize the folks who have helped us along the way to excel in our business. Today, I'm excited to have a fellow business owner from Indianapolis join us today. My guest likes to seek out great vegan restaurants in cities that he travels to. He is probably the most inspiring and excited introvert you'll meet. And he is proud to be building his third business that'll make Inc.'s list of fastest growing companies from ideas that simply were in his head of where he believes the world is moving. Please join me in welcoming Bryan to the show today. Welcome, Bryan.
Hey, Tim, thanks. How about starting with the look for vegan restaurants in cities? Nice reversal of order. Yeah, he's a total weirdo. Yes, happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I appreciate you
Coming from vegan restaurants. What a life.
Nobody has shared that with me yet, so I thought that was definitely worth calling out because it is very unique.
Well, it's there's maybe a bit more to the story because my wife said once, if it weren't for the lack of showers and the smoking pot, I would have been a hippie in the 60s, right? So we've always had this weird kind of view of life, and she is a vegan. I've been a vegetarian for almost 30 years. And what we have found, though, when we do travel, when you find the vegan restaurants, they're usually in the quirkier sides of town where there's usually nice trails. So there's a bit more, but it's almost like that Van Halen brown M&M story, right? You know, if they're not there, then there's other things that fall apart from the other direction. If you find the vegan restaurant, you're probably going to plug into the cooler part of a community or city. So that's kind of the undertone there.
Love it. So Bryan, I'll have you start by introducing yourself and tell us a little bit of your personal story, where you were born, where you live, your family, etc.
Yeah, thank you, Tim. My name is Bryan Gray. I hail from the city of Indianapolis, Indiana, born and reared Hoosier. Sold my last business to a group up in Minnesota. So I lived up in the Twin Cities for a year. But as was most of us Midwesterners, family brings us back to the Midwest. I've got twin boys that are 19, been married to my awesome best friend, funniest person I know for 31 years.
Congratulations.
I know. I feel like such a settler. We've lived in this house like 24 years as of like Tuesday. So this whole like, where's my life gone thing, it's just like hitting me. So yeah, it's I grew up here. Just proud to be, like I said, a Hoosier. I love to travel the world and do great things and see great things. And I'm just grateful to be here, Tim.
Where's your favorite place to travel?
Well, if you talk to my wife, probably the Caribbean, just because of the chill lifestyle. I love every Canadian city I've been to. I've adored Vancouver, Toronto, others. So I've been in Montreal yet, but I like the Northwest. I like the woodsier side. Kim likes a little bit of the Caribbean side. So mostly in the North America, Western Hemisphere area.
Fantastic. Well, we didn't talk about the fact that I'm a Canadian, so that wasn't a planted call out to my hometown.
No, just the accent alone, Tim, is all we need, my friend. You're going to say decals next and process.
So, Bryan, what's a funny story that your family likes to tell about you that you'd be willing to share with us?
Well, I don't story or just who I am. There's two things that come to mind on that. More than once in the rearing of our children, my wife has had to say to the boys, kids, I promise back in the 80s, your dad was cool. And I said, why did you have to add the I promise on there more than once? And I don't want to say my best years were behind me, but I was a child of the 80s. But I think the funniest, quirkiest things that I happen to enjoy, and I think others do as well, is we have the little sheepoos, boy and girl sheepoo. And I sing to them daily, and I usually come up with a different song every day. They all have, of course, they have voices, and I can pretty much do about voices for about anything in any situation that I think happens to be a talent that no one will pay for, but I do happen to enjoy.
Would you be willing to give us a little example?
No, because you can see me. It might slip out somehow, some way.
I love it. So tell us about this inspiring introvert.
Yeah, well, it's this kind of, so I when thinking about our time together today, this has been a good, healthy exercise for anybody, I think, to kind of look back and say, who really helped me along my way, whether you knew them or they don't know you, or how they all inspired. And I think that this might be a tip of the hat or a shout out to some of your fellow introverts you talk to, because it's not a natural thing for me to, I have these social anxieties, right? Like I get really worked up about going to neighborhood parties. It just consumes my day. My wife loves them. It makes me nervous. Once I'm there, I'm fine, but I'm more comfortable in front of a room of 500 strangers presenting than I am just with individuals. And it's because, so it's always been really hard for me to develop real close relationships with people. I've learned to deal with it over time. But what's I think is ironic is that when you meet me or you see me doing my day job or running my business, you're like, man, what a great outgoing guy, full of energy and very inspiring. But I'm just like this person that's very, very not private by design, but it's just hard for me to do a lot of the things when I see somebody who can network well or can really communicate with other people. It's just an admired thing. I admire it. It's just harder for me to do.
Totally understand. I think you and I are similar. So it's almost like when we're on the stage, we're putting on a costume or jumping into a role that, right? It's we're performing more than we are having that individual
absolutely
conversation, right?
Yeah, and when you not that I'm a in the vein of a celebrity, but a lot of actors or people that they'll tell you the story like I'm just a real introverted, shy person. But not when you see them act or on stage, it's like, wow, they're a natural. And it's just so it's people might think that how we get our energy is really what defines us as introverts, right? We kind of get energy from within. So in fact, when I was looking at the people who've inspired me, there's a couple that really stand out, but some of my best advice I've gleaned were just stuff I've read or listened to because I'm such a curious person. That the people that have made a big impact in my life don't even know I even exist, which I think is kind of cool too.
That is cool. So Bryan, tell us about how the business came about, and at what point in time did you have the confidence that you could run your own business?
It all started. No, I had a baseball card shop when I was just a teenager, and I grew up really poor. I had a really rough childhood by most people's standards, but what I didn't have parents that told me I couldn't do something. Right, had nothing, but never had these limitations or just self-limiting beliefs put around me. And Donnie Deutsch said it well. He said, growing up, he had this naive sense of entitlement, like, why not me? Right. So, why couldn't I do that? And I've always just had these visions and followed them and just acted on my gut. So my entrepreneurship started when I was, 14 years old, having a baseball card shop, and it was just a wonderful experience. And then working first generation college student, paid my way through school and all those things. But every single business I've started was something that I saw out there that I just believed enough in myself to never, ever, ever give up and just to go, go and do something about it and not will your way to success by any means, but just never giving up, which I guess comes across as willpower. But because no one else really sees what you see sometimes. And while people help you, if you fall down, people rarely will lift you above sometimes for their own reasons. Yes. So you have to really follow that inner voice. And I've just been blessed or cursed with this inner voice that just, that drives me to, and every single one of my business was some kind of weird thing that happened to me at some point that I just never let go of, that became something, down the road.
So as you've come up with these new ideas of things that didn't really exist before, how do you have the confidence to keep getting back up and pushing forward?
I think it's that inner belief, right? That's why the things that always mean something to us, like the quotes that mean something to people, usually is the reason they resonate, because it's who they really are. Like that Japanese proverb, fall down 7 times, stand up 8. One person with belief is a majority, or the things like that. And so we kind of look for those sayings to kind of motivate it and drive us through this. In my first business, that actually the first multi-million-dollar business we built, we put ATM cash machines out in convenience stores, grocery stores, back in the 90s. Crazy, when they weren't anywhere but at a bank branch. And this all came from, I was in Bloomington. I was at Indiana University back in the late 80s, and you had to go outside the bar to get money to come back in. Right. And during the summer, you could do it because there's nobody there. But in the school year, like there's no way you'd leave to ever come back in. And I remember this moment, I woke up with all these receipts going, I think I cleaned out my account last night, these little $10 withdrawals, And then I saw one day, 10 years later, that you can own your own ATM. Like, oh my God. Then all of a sudden just boom, just opens up. And when you see something, and this is like, I like to teach and help everyone, when you see something, just act on it. Right. And so why not? Why wouldn't they be everywhere? So then all of a sudden you start looking at, how can I do this? How can I do that? And you start connecting the dots, and and then lo and behold, years go by, we have 1,500 machines out there, and we're making nickels, dimes, and quarters in every transaction. Like, I never saw myself here. And then the next business came from a challenge in that business. So I've always just kind of find little openings and find things that aren't being resolved, and in realizing that can be that opportunity to take advantage of.
That's awesome. So you've had a few successful business. Tell us a little bit more about what you're doing today.
Yeah, what we're doing today is I lead an organization called the Revenue Path Group. And what we're doing is we're reimagining value, how it's bought, how it's sold, and how it's even positioned. Because the world of business to business selling is so fundamentally changed, right? And we live in this environment called the 3 deadly C's. Everybody's becoming commoditized. Decision-making teams are getting bigger. So consensus decision-making and compressed selling time. Right? For those of us who started selling before the internet, right? Or early days of the internet, we had 100% influence on the sale.
Right.
Now it's down to like 6 to 10%. So we're being squeezed down to the very end. And we believe that organizations are going to really struggle from a sales perspective moving forward to uphold their margins when they can't get access to the right people early enough. So we help groups better understand how to create value, how to communicate that value, and how to sell that value. And it's been a really exciting journey, but again, it's just challenges I've seen along the way that helped us make some breakthroughs that now we're kind of helping other people do the same.
And what type of clients do you work with?
We work with organizations. They have to be in the business to business space. So they have to have a sales team, but they're mostly in the manufacturer traditional type sectors. But it doesn't really matter what industry. They just have to be facing the similar challenges others have. I can't get access. My salespeople can't get in early enough, and we're having all these challenges. So sales teams that are from 15 to 150 salespeople globally is we prefer, because of our online programming helps us do some things uniquely that you can't do with dispersed sales teams.
Yeah. And more specifically, how do you help them to overcome those 3 challenges?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we help them by understanding what real value or impact they're creating. We help mirror that with how the prospect's brain truly makes a buying decision. Because what we hear people say is, I can't get access. I can't meet with a real decision maker. Well, the reason you can't is because you're not saying anything that makes them say, boy, I'd like to meet with that person.
Sure.
So how do you understand how you can gain that access earlier at the higher level? That's the only way to avoid this race to the bottom that's driven by the 3 deadly C's. You've got to get that earlier access at a higher level, but most don't know what to say. They don't know how to say it. They don't even know who to say it to. So we help them capture their value, communicate that value, and execute against that approach.
Fantastic. Awesome. You mentioned it earlier. It kind of sounds simple, but the devil's in the details, right? The challenge is, how do you actually do?
Oh, it's that is so well put, because I like simple things that are hard. I don't like complicated things, right? Because if you think of simple things, I can deal with simplicity. And this is a perfect case, because no one would argue, oh yeah, who wouldn't want to get in earlier at a higher level?
Yeah.
But creating the bravery or the messaging to be able to do that is so hard, because it's just easier to respond and react to my prospects' requests versus work hard to get in earlier at a higher level. And I think that's going to be the real fleshing out of the future of what a future salesperson actually looks like. And we can go on in details. I mean, the world is changing at such a pace that if you're stuck at the very end, just responding and reacting, you're going to lose your job to artificial intelligence. It's just that's an inevitability. It's just whether it's 3 years or 5 years.
Right.
So yes, it's a simple challenge, but it's hard to be able to have the right conversations at the right level with the right people. That's the biggest challenge, I think.
Yeah, especially with all the gatekeepers and
absolutely
busyness of executives, that the folks that you want to talk to just don't have time on their calendars, right? So
yeah, because it's not, unless you make it a priority, hence the priority sale, which is our most recent book we published. It's all about getting to people's priorities.
Yeah.
Right. And the reason we're busy is because we always make time or room for a priority. Right. So that's all. The whole idea of busy it's just, you're not important enough, right? It's not urgent enough, or it's not a priority enough. And so it's just like money. Nobody has money, but they'll always fund priorities. Right? Everything else, there's just no money, or there's no time, or I'm too busy.
Yeah.
Well, speak to a priority, and priorities are commitments to make my threats go away. So if you understand threats, you can help align to priority.
Yeah. Love it. So Bryan, share a story where someone pushed you or inspired you that you could do it, and how that impacted you.
Okay. So I would say that early on in my business career, so I've been an entrepreneur, like I'm in the growing up as a baseball card shop, and I took a straight commission sales job right out of school. And today those are unheard of, right? But 30 years ago, I remember it was a straight commission job, and I was hanging out with some buddies in Chicago, and one of my college roommates, he got a job at Arthur Andersen, and we're all hanging out, a bunch of guys, and I told him what I was doing, and he said, "Oh, are you just going to do that till you find something better?" I was like, "No, straight commission, I can make as much as I want, right?" That concept still fascinates me, right? So I had my first boss, his name is Dan Burkhauser, and I don't know if you remember the book "Swim with the Sharks Without Being Eaten Alive" by Harvey McKay. It was a huge business book in the late '80s, and I did exactly what that book told me to do, and it helped me land this job. And Dan was a wonderful man. It's funny, as he was 40 years old when I started, and my girlfriend at the time, wife now, said, "How was your first day?" I said, "Dan's pretty cool for an old guy." And he was like 40 years old, right? Now I'm 56. But Dan was a wonderful person. So it's what Dan gave me was the ability he gave me the guardrails and allowed me to find things and help grow the business. So it was almost like guidance by not being as involved. Like, he was always there for me to share ideas with. You usually say no out of the gate, but that was okay, because I learned over time that when Dan just said no, all it meant was you're not prepared. Your idea is not ready.
Got it.
Because if I came back, he'd say, "Sure, go ahead." Right. So, he was valuable to me because he helped check me on my ideas and make sure they're better thought through. Because if I never came back with the idea again, that's okay. We just didn't do anything about it. In fact, that's what led to the ATM business. Is he was not for the idea whatsoever at first, but I came back 2 or 3 times on it, because it was a pretty radical shift compared to what we were doing, and it ended up being just a wonderful opportunity for us both. So he became my first real business partner at the same time.
Oh, very cool.
Yeah.
So Bryan, what's your biggest learning as a business owner over the years?
I would say the thing that, and I think this is something, Tim, just knowing what you do, I think it's important. Like on your bio, you mentioned you help people get through the bottlenecks. And if I can infer, it's about helping entrepreneurs get out of their own way. Yeah. And one thing I've learned over time, and been credit due a couple of the Strategic Coach, Canadian organization out of Toronto. I did that program years ago, and that was really helpful for me, because it helped me understand my talent and strengths, and what I can do and what I can't do. And I think that most entrepreneurs and leaders have this rugged individualism. I can do it. I know how to do it. And they don't realize the problems they stay with or inherit or keep with unless they can learn to let go of things. But what do you let go of? And if I don't know what my strengths are, I'm unsure of what to let go of, so I don't let go of anything. Right. So something I learned along the way that was really helpful to me is understand my natural talents and celebrate that in others, and delegate thinking, not just tasks, to other people. That's been invaluable. And if nothing else, for the young entrepreneurs or the striving business owners, I don't care if you're young or old, but early in their entrepreneurial journey, to realize that you can't do this on your own, because we have these narrow sets of talent, right? And there's a lot of other stuff that comes with that, and you can't go far when you're dragging so much other stuff along with you, and you've got to be able to set that loose or set that free to other people.
You mentioned getting out of your own way, that we sometimes we can't even see what we can't see, right? So I've met a lot of folks who have had successful year-over-year growth in their business, and then it's plateaued, and they just don't understand why, right? And they go back to what got them there, right? They're working hard and working long, and what they haven't realized is that they've hit their own capacity.
Absolutely.
And in order for the business to go to the next level, they've now got to implement systems and teams to be able to get stuff off of their plate and be able to scale up. So
yeah, and that journey of discovery, man, when you understand real talents and gifts are, that's what you should be doing, only that. And you start feeling guilty going, that's the easy part. Well, work shouldn't be hard,
Yeah.
right? You should charge more for what's easy for you, which is a contradictory kind of statement,
Yes,
isn't it?
yes, right.
But do more of what's easy. And all of a sudden, wow, this whole idea of being an entrepreneur isn't as hard as I thought it was. Yeah. But it just took me years to get to that simple of a statement.
Fair enough, right?
Right.
So, Bryan, tell us about a business, a challenge that you had, because we know that business success doesn't happen in isolation, right? So what's a challenge that you've experienced through the years where a fellow business owner helped you get through it?
Wow, that's a good question. I think that my life being at 50, I started in business in the late, like 89. And what's really weird is all the shocks we've gone through, right? 9/11, the 08, 07, 08 collapse, most recently COVID, and these just minor recessions along the way as well. And so you pick up so much along the way, and a lot of advice you do get, you don't really see the value of it until years later. And, you know, I've been faced with not being able to make payroll, right? And that's just, you know, and having people say, you know what, you're not a real entrepreneur or business owner until you have to look everybody in the eye and say, there's just not enough money to go around, you know? And so it's almost like I look for these comforting thoughts of other people, you know, as I've hit these real walls, because the first time when disruption happens, if you don't know where to go, you just start scrambling and freaking out like everybody else. And it's not like I'm immune to any of these things, but they're just shocks to the system that the longer you've been at this, you deal with it. There's always another side of this. You always come out differently. We always usually come out better. We just don't know how long of a shock it's going to truly be.
Yeah. I hear a lot of times from folks that how lonely it can be at the top, and you don't have somebody to talk to. So to your point, just simply being able to reach out to someone and say, hey, have you ever gone through this? And hear that, yes, they have, can be reassuring of, oh, good, I'm not alone.
Absolutely. And I mean, that's the whole thing is every leader is lonely in their own way, but there's a way to connect with them, right? Just like, oh my God, you understand me, right? And just yes. Sharing ideas. And I think that's really helpful. And I think that's what I think COVID helped do as well. A lot of people reconnected, right? We're in our basements or in our upstairs bedrooms, and let's just Zoom chat with somebody. And now you think about just a phone call. It's like, I can't even see this person. This is really weird. Yeah, but right? just to see somebody for 5 minutes or so, just to connect is a real healthy thing to do. And I think it's been just really important, I think, for people to share their experiences. We're not alone. We all share the same fears. We all have the same challenges and issues. And it really doesn't have to be lonely if you have that right kind of network set up.
It's interesting that pre-COVID, people either preferred to meet in person or a phone call. And I remember, like, why not Zoom so that we can at least have a face-to-face conversation? And now the world's just completely changed. Everybody's more than willing to jump on a Zoom call. And it to your point, it makes it a lot more personal than a phone call.
Absolutely. I mean, in you know, a lot of salespeople struggle with this, right? They thought they were right back to face-to-face selling, and with decision-making teams getting bigger, and with remote work policies, you'll never have everybody in the room anymore. Right. And the challenge is going to be, how can you leverage something like this prior to going to on-site? I'm not against face-to-face selling, but we can still use technology to help take some of that inefficiency out of the process.
Yes. Oh, certainly the travel, to go to especially if it's a flight meeting, to take a flight, and then, in the first 5 minutes that it was it's not going to be a good meeting. Probably better to have figured that out on Zoom, right?
Absolutely. And have the hard questions covered before you leave the house versus 4 states away going, I should have asked that question before I got on the plane. But we wanted to look busy. We wanted to stay active and all that. And that worked, I suppose, when the world wasn't accelerating around us, which is my fascination on accelerations. And I think that most of us aren't prepared or equipped for it, and it's going to happen whether we like it or not. And there are some simple things we all can do to combat these accelerations. But that's a great example of what was acceptable behavior in the past, is to waste a whole day not really getting much done, feeling like you're busy. And I just don't think those days are available anymore.
Yeah. So, Bryan, if you had to pick 3 people in your business journey that you're most grateful for being there, as helping with your business growth, who would they be, and how'd they help you?
Well, I would say, first of all, Dan Burkhauser, who Dan, gosh, he's probably been retired for some time now, and I helped him get there. By working together, he is my first business partner. He was the person that hired me, gave me my first job. That was just as cool after 9 years as he was the first day I met him. Just a wonderful, wonderful person. Dan had just tremendous impact on me in letting me mature, right, as a business person, and became my first business partner. Richard Salevich, who has passed away, was our accountant, and he was a very, very smart man. And he helped us sell our first business, but also taught me how to really not just read a financial statement, but just to really help financial statements work the business. I'm not prone to be numbers oriented, and I don't pay attention to those things like I could or should. And Richard helped me really see the world from using financial statements or P&Ls to really make better decisions moving forward. So Richard was, until he passed away probably about 10, 15 years ago, was instrumental in every business venture we went down the road. He's just, I wouldn't ever do anything without Richard's, not blessing, but just his feedback or input. And those are two of the people personally that have met from a business perspective that have meant the most to me. The third, as I mentioned, he doesn't even know me, but Dan Sullivan's a strategic coach. I think what the work they're doing is just fantastic. It was through the strategic coach program that I first understood what delegation really was, right? Of thinking, not tasks. And it has to start at, what are your unique talents, right? What is it that I do that's different than everyone else out there? And to your point, not accepting a blind spot, but understanding, and then understand how to find that in other people has just really opened my eyes to what, freedom to be yourself is like, and allowing people to do great work. Because I've always felt weird that people spend more time with me and my organization than they do at home with their family. And I took it as a real responsibility. You spend more time awake here than you do with your kids. I go, that's kind of stinks. But let's just have fun with it. If you got to be here, let's have fun with this. And, right. and I found that fun is really like letting people be their best person, right? And that sounds kind of weird, but this idea of doing the best work of their lives. And I just don't believe in anything but that. Every day should be the best day we've ever had. This should be the best meeting we've ever had. And, because I just can't accept that my best days are anywhere in a rearview mirror, right? So every day I have to strive for saying, what would make this the best interview? What would make this the best presentation? Because I don't think I've done it yet, right? And I want the people that work with me to actually feel and believe that same thing. And so that's something that was invaluable. Like I said, Dan, I've never met him personally, but huge impact on anybody who's worked around me or with me for the last 20 years. Hopefully has benefited from some of the things that I've learned and applied from the strategic coach.
That's awesome.
And it can be any coaching program. So I don't want to just.
Sure. Yeah. Absolutely. To that point, people will tell me that I reach out to folks and they'll tell me they have a coach, and I'm like, fantastic, right? Congratulations for you, because it doesn't matter in my head whether it's me or somebody else. I just want to make sure that business owners are getting the help they need.
Which is a true belief in what you're doing, because you can't take on all the work. I bet you probably couldn't even double your business right now, which is a good thing, right? Because you're that busy.
Yeah.
So the reality is I can't serve everyone. So I've got to at least be a proponent or an advocate for the work that you're doing.
Yes.
Right.
Yes. So absolutely correct. Yes. And it's to your point, it's more about, progressing the small business owners forward, right? And making sure they've got the tools and the best practices to be the 100%. Best versions of themselves, right?
Yep.
And one tool is going to fit somebody's personality better than another. So
yeah. Absolutely.
So Bryan, as you think about the next 3 to 5 years, what are the biggest challenges that you see coming to reach your goals, and who are the types of people that you're going to need to be in your life to help solve those challenges?
Yeah, I think that what helps my business right now, I need really good operators, right? And because what you don't want an organization of 9 different visionaries, right? And so I'm good at that part, and I play that role well. I'm not good at a lot of other things, and one thing that I think that I read years ago, like project management is like the career of the future, and I think great project managers are just fantastic. They don't have to work for you. They can be outsourced project managers. That's just a role that's so valuable. So along those lines, I would say great operators. So operators are people that have a bit of the roll up the sleeves, that can actually move things to closure, but understand the business of what's being done and can move it along in support. So I look at true operators are going to be important. I think the biggest challenge that we're going to face in the next 3 to 5 years, me personally and anyone in the world, is acceleration. I just don't think we as humans can grasp what true acceleration is going to do to us or for us. Yeah. And we've reached that point. Friedman talks about this in his most recent book, Thank You for Being Late. But there's a lot of books out there now on this whole idea of not just the rate of change, but the speed of the rate of change is accelerating at the same time. And we've outstripped our human adaptability. And when you've outstripped human adaptability, you start getting really uncomfortable, right? We start fighting things. We start wanting to go back in time. And you look at whether it doesn't matter what's politics or the world around you, it's just hard to deal with an uncertain future that's going to accelerate even faster. And as hard as that is for most, if we just simply understand how to contend with it, that's probably the best we can do, because this is an accelerating, and there is a riding this curve that if you can't stay on that curve, you're just going to fall behind faster. And that's why the biggest risk we face as business leaders, and I think this really plays to the business that you're in as well, Tim, is that you can't take a rugged individualistic approach to a world that's accelerating around you. And it's not about getting on the curve. It's about the pain you're going to live with if you fall off the curve, because you just can't catch back up. And Friedman tells the story, bow and arrow 1.0 to bow and arrow 2.0 took about 450 years. So you didn't have to really stay on the bleeding edge, with that. But now things are changing so rapidly, and we can't keep up economically, time-wise, all the stuff going on. The only way we can is to be as efficient as we can be, which if you understand your talents, so all these things kind of tie back, because the future should scare all of us unless we're properly positioned and aligned to make that happen. Yeah. Or not make it happen, but to contend with it.
To stay up with it. Yeah. I as you were explaining that, I was thinking about, so my past life was marketing, and now that I own my own business, I'm doing some of my own marketing, right? And it's like, oh my goodness, right? I don't know how to do all of today's stuff. I need to hire somebody and outsource it, because I feel old.
Tim, it's so funny, because even my son, who does a little bit of interning, was, Dad, you haven't posted an article on LinkedIn, and so I was like, I know, I just don't really know how to do it. It's just like, and the excuses are just so lame, Tim. Yeah. They're horrible. But get me in front of a group of people, I'm fine. But it's really weird. Just this little tiny things that you feel like you're so far behind. Like, why jump on Twitter now? Because I'll look like a total noob if I get on there, right? Yeah, so I was like, I'll just lurk and watch other people. I can't say anything. Yes, it's like I feel like that this is going right past me.
And it feels like almost every other month there's a new platform launching. It's like I haven't even caught up to the old platform. What's this doing?
I mean, TikTok, my nephew was doing, or TikTok, that's old school. TikTok, TikTok, right? I remember my nephew was dancing on TikTok 3 or 4 years ago, going, that's just a silly app. Going, now we're not on TikTok, and I think it's going to cause some problems here. It's just really, really bizarre, but it's fascinating at the same point.
Yeah, and to your points, it's moving so quickly that it's almost impossible to keep up. So I like your perspective of just kind of hang on and make sure you're doing everything you can to continue to learn and grow with the way.
Absolutely, and build strong cultures. I think the what we really do for organizations is build strong revenue cultures, because as you know about your work with culture, that right, cultures are just ritual and routine behaviors. Yeah. Everybody has a culture. You may not be able to articulate it, but you have one, and you may not like it. Yeah. But you can do something about it. And I believe that the only way to counter these accelerations is to have stronger and stronger cultures. And again, culture is nothing but ritual and routine behaviors. And in getting people, and we know that change is hard, right? So that's the real work to be done, is to help culturally align organizations and culturally strengthen them so they can contend with all this uncertainty and change.
Yes, absolutely. So Jim Rohn, one of my favorite authors, he says that we become the average of the 5 people that we spend the most time with. So as you think about that, is that something that excites you or makes you nervous? What's your perspective on that?
It's funny if it makes you nervous at my age. I got to change my friends, man. That's interesting because I think that kind of dogs us or stays with our whole lives, right? Go back to your college friends, go back to your high school friends, and we do have a chance to change our environments and our friends. But I think that's something that you can look at where you were in your life, and in those 3 to 5 people probably drove your life. And there's probably a lot of psychological reasons why that happens. I will say personally that I've always enjoyed being around people when I do hang out with people that actually work me up a bit, right? To get me excited about things. And we riff on funny things or ideas, but I always leave them with more energy than when I got there. And it's not a selfish thing because I want them to feel the same thing. And I hear that frequently, that, hey, I always feel more energized after I hang out with you. And it's like, well, it's a self-serving, mutual beneficial thing, because I wouldn't keep coming back if I didn't feel the same thing. Because it's just harder to get me to do those things. But I really watch how I interact with others, just because it's hard for me. But when I do, the people I do get to hang out with, I always feel better. I always feel more energy, and we always riff on an idea or two. And it's like Seinfeld. I heard Jerry Seinfeld in an interview once say that even when he goes to parties or events, he's always working on bits, right? And I feel like that's me too. Like I'm always working on something in my head. And so I got to make sure I got to give something back that the others feel the same way, that we can kind of get further, faster together.
Yeah. The other side of that quote is it doesn't have to be a live person, right? It could be books we read or, videos that we watch. We can, our 5 people can be somebody we never even met.
Absolutely.
You're very well read, so you've probably gotten a lot of influence from the authors that you follow and read.
Yeah, there's a couple. The Future is Faster Than You Think. I don't know the authors. I just read that. There's like 3 or 4 books I'm reading on the future, because and I'm just an insanely curious person, and I think that if someone said, what were the attributes of what made you successful beyond this entrepreneur spirit about me, I'm just super curious, right? And I think that the curious people are the most interesting ones, I think, anyway, because I find a lot of interest in the people. I'm just fascinated with other people and their stories. And I think that's always helped me ask better questions, because I'm genuinely curious. It's like your whole thing with the business of coaching. You love this whole idea of it, and that you'll exude that, right? And I think that curious people are very similar, is, they always ask the insightful questions. I hope they do. Yes. Because they really want to know, not because, I need to get you to say this so I can respond with that. So I think that my curiosity takes me to content and meeting new ideas, just because I really like to figure out what's behind that. And so I'm always been fascinated by personal stories of people. I don't care where you come from. If you've achieved something, you've had to overcome a lot of odds, right? And I'm just always fascinated by the stories.
Yeah. What's one of the most unique or odd stories you've ever heard?
Oh, wow, that's a good on the spot question. What comes to mind? I don't know if this is the right answer, but for some reason years ago, I was given a subscription to the Rolling Stone. And I'm in my 40s reading this, going, this is clearly not my demo, but I'm going to read this. And I remember Lil Wayne. There was a story on Lil Wayne, and he was on the cover. And for a middle-aged guy in the suburbs, seeing a picture of Lil Wayne, going, whoa, that guy's got tattoos everywhere, But I was like, I'm going to read this guy's story, just because you just can't get to any level of success like that, or the cover of the Rolling Stone, without having a fascinating story.
Sure, yeah.
And what's interesting to me, Tim, is that you read this and how hard he had to work. And I can't give you details, because the details don't even matter. Just how I felt about the story was just, it doesn't matter where you're from or who you are. If you get anywhere in life, you had very similar challenges, and you never gave up, right? And you always kept going when no one believed in you. And I'm gonna get all weepy here, right? But this idea of just everyone has a fascinating story. So I don't know if there's as much weird to me, but there's a story behind everything. And I just, maybe if we could expand all of our minds, just read a biography or a story of someone that you just don't think you'd ever want to be around or associate with, a good person, right? Not an evil person, but just read about them, and it comes from a different perspective. And I think you'll just learn there's so many similarities that we all share, that we're all striving. And I think there's a real interesting kindred spirit with that.
wouldn't it make us all a better world if we just took that time to ask people their stories and get to know the behind the scenes why of how,
Oh my God.
where they're at.
Yeah, it's I tell you, man, it's 100%. And I think that in this world, everybody has that story, right? And it's if you could just spend that time, but in I don't, can you develop curiosity in people? I mean, you could probably nurture it.
I think you could nurture it for sure. Yeah,
Yeah,
you could teach
then
them how to ask good questions. And
there you go. Let's use that for those that are listening or watching on that. You want to be a more curious person. But think about that. That's a great point, Tim. What about, hey, find out someone's story of just a complete stranger, because everyone has an amazing story. If you really think about it, their journey they've gone through and the three coolest things that have happened to them, the three most challenging things that have happened to them, we would find that we pretty much face very similar things, but I think you'd be inspired by that as well.
Yeah. I think the coolest thing I've experienced is when I look to somebody who, I think, wow, they're so successful and so above my level. And then they tell me their story. It's like, oh my goodness, they're just a human like me.
Yeah, absolutely. So Mark Cuban, we love Mark Cuban, right? Love the Mark Cuban, and I love the Shark Tank, and I watch it all the time. There's a neighbor friend of ours that loaned Mark Cuban, friend of my wife, Susan, that loaned Mark Cuban $25 back in Bloomington, back in the late 80s or early 80s, to open up his bar, and he never paid her back. The reason I bring that, because that guy was a hustler, right? They called him Studley, and they called him Studley for not obvious reasons. But it's great hearing Susan tell Mark Cuban stories, and you see where he's come from. It's like that guy came from just a guy going to school, and then did all these things. But whenever Kim will always record off the TV, Mark Cuban saying something, that she do a voiceover going, "Susan, I promise I'll pay you your $25 back soon."
I love it.
Yeah,
that's awesome. So,
and he's so reachable. I was like, Susan, go on LinkedIn, ask for your $25 back. Yes. It will create a great exchange.
Yes, and he'll jump all over it too, because it'll give
absolutely
publicity. Yeah,
I had a friend of mine. He was at a tech conference a few years ago, and he was passing with Mark Cuban, and Mark Cuban had a shirt on said "Talk nerdy to me" on his T-shirt. And he goes, I just want to start talking to him, because he talked geeky stuff. I was like, that's a guy that's just got it going on, but just super curious, right? Because he'll jump into all kinds of conversations on LinkedIn with people, and all you do is just throw it out there. And I think that kind of plays to who he's always been too. So another curious person.
Yeah. Fantastic. So wrapping up here, Bryan, if there was something catastrophic that happened in your business today, who's the first person you'd call, and what would that conversation look like?
It's got to be my wife. She's my best friend. Yeah. And I tell you, and I don't even know if it would be just like, what would I do business wise? Because we all need in our lives a significant other that we can just talk to, right? Because a lot of times what I've learned in my life also is that saying that things are never as bad as they seem or as good as they seem. Sure. And so I think that just a personal connection that you can talk to, just to kind of bring you back to, we're going to get through this. It's happened to other people before. It almost like setting yourself on solid footing. And so I would say to anyone, just who gives you that best grounding of yourself, because sometimes you just don't need advice right away. Yep. I've learned that the hard way too, Bryan. I'm not asking for advice. I just want to tell you something. Yes. Because I want to fix everything.
Don't fix me. I just need to get it off my chest.
Yeah. And I think the same is true when we get those bad news calls, right? You just need someone just to listen without any sort of advice. So I would talk to Kim, who's been my best friend for so many years of my life.
Awesome. So Bryan, you've been blessed with some incredible people who have helped you on your journey. So if they were all on the show here today, what would you like to say to them?
Man, that's great. I only hope that this is where you try to get the guest all weepy, right?
Yeah. How am I doing?
Yeah, doing great.
Okay.
I'll tell you, quote, since we're friends here, and I don't know who's listening, I'd been through prostate cancer I was 49 years old when I got it. And this is the last time I was called a young person, because every old guy gets prostate cancer. And when I got, in these moments, you get it. And the doctor said, well, it's, when young people get it, it's cause for concern. It's like, that's the last legitimate time we call a young person. But I was on this hormone suppression and testosterone, right? Because testosterone is what spreads the cancer from your prostate to your bones. That's how it all goes down. So I was on this suppressant for a year where my testosterone was reduced to nothing. And I was the weepiest guy. I would speak to groups. Honest to goodness, when I would stand in front of a group of people, I would thank them for their time. I'd start crying because it did really mean a lot to me. They took time out of their day for me. And I get all weepy. And I told Kim, I'm not going to watch This Is Us until I'm off this Lupron. I just can't do it. So I'm gonna fight back the tears. But I do hope that Richard and Dan and others that they realize the impact they've had on other people, because I think that it's so good for our spirit and our soul, right? To know that we make a difference, because we don't always hear it from people all the time. But and I hope people feel the same way about the people that I've met in my life. But I hope and wish that they would know that the things that they shared and the guidance they provided, or the guardrails they provided along the way, help better my personal life, my family's life. And what gets really cool is that they see this passed on to other people. So it's truly that pay it forward. So it'd be nice if we all knew that, because I think we'd all appreciate that. But that's what I'm grateful for.
Awesome. Thank you, Bryan. Well, it's been a pleasure speaking with you today, and really, really enjoyed your insights. And thanks again for being on the show.
My pleasure, Tim. Thank you. I hope this made for some good audio.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
awesome.
Well,
to everyone who tuned in, thanks for listening to Self-Made is a Myth show with your host, Coach Tim Campbell. Be sure to help us spread this movement by liking it and posting it on your social media. To join our movement, go to bemadtogether.com. Okay, folks, that's a wrap. Make sure to pay it forward, and I'll see you all next time. Take care.